Hello everyone, good morning. I'm sorry for the delay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning everyone. How's everyone doing today?
We are great, teacher. We put emojis on the chat again.
Yes, you guys can. I'm very sad today because this is our last class. So I won't
Me
have more.
too.
Yes, very sad, but also excited because we spent whole almost 6 weeks together, and it's our last class because we only have 6 classes in the course. So this is our sixth and our last one. But we still have another week or so kind of together because you guys will have still activities next week and then the final exam, which I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work, if I'm going to be there or not, but you guys will receive information soon about that. Okay, so don't worry. I see some crying emojis, some heartbroken. I know, guys, it's very sad, but you guys have been doing awesome this course this time. I see a lot of you here today, so that is great. That makes me very happy as your teacher. And let's get started with our class so that we don't waste any more time. And thank you guys for coming to our final class. Today, as you guys can see in our little front page, we have advanced sentence structure and connected speech as our topics today. So we're going to talk about advanced sentence structure for the first half and then go on to connected speech for the last part. And maybe have a little activity at the end as well. So our lesson objectives today is to learn advanced transition words, which you guys, if you don't know what these are, we're going to learn them in a bit. Also understand how to create complex sentences, and then also level up your listening and speaking skills by understanding connected speech, which is a very, very important topic for speaking and for listening. Grow will definitely open another class, I believe. I don't know when, but we do have at least 2 intensivos every year, I think. So there will be another one if you guys want to participate. Yeah. So then, as for our first topic, which is transition words, you guys are already familiar with and, with so, with but, with because. These are all called conjunctions, and we use them to combine sentences, right? So if I have two sentences, like the first one here, she studies English, and then if I have another sentence saying she takes piano lessons, I could combine these sentences using and, just like in the first example. So she studies English and takes piano lessons. She studies English and takes piano lessons. So I'm using and to add another idea to my sentence and combine these two ideas since they are similar, right? If I want to show a contrast, I'm going to use but. So I wanted to go to the park, but it was closed. I wanted to go to the park, but it was closed. So I wanted to do something and I wasn't able to do it. I'm showing this contrast between these ideas, right? So the first one, and, is about addition. I'm adding a new idea. The second is about contrast. And I'm using these to combine my sentences, right? Because I could say also that I wanted to go to the park, it was closed. I could say these sentences like this as two separate ideas. But if I want to speak more naturally and I don't want to pause every sentence, I can use the conjunctions to combine them, right? And you guys do this all the time. So this is just an introduction. I can also say that it was raining, so we stayed inside. It was raining, so we stayed inside. This one is a little bit different than the others because it's more of a cause and effect, or kind of a result of that first action. So it was raining, so we stayed inside. Because it was raining, we stayed inside. So there's a cause and an effect to the idea being expressed here. And I'm using so to give this idea. I'm using so to give to explain that is a cause and effect, right? The same thing can go with he missed the meeting because his car broke down. So he missed the meeting because his car broke down. In this case, it's also kind of a cause and effect relationship going on here because I have the first sentence, he missed the meeting, and then his car broke down, and I want to combine these two ideas so that it flows better. So he missed the meeting because his car broke down. So we use this all the time. You guys are familiar with this. And what we're going to do today is basically learn a few more ways to express this, but a little bit more advanced, so that you guys can really level up how you talk in English. And what we're going to learn today is called transition words. They have basically the same function as conjunctions in our sentences, so they work very similar to and, very similar to but, very similar to so, and because. But they are a little bit more advanced, they are a little bit more academic, and they show this relationship a little bit clearer. So we can also combine sentences, just like we did with the conjunctions, using transition words, which are words that help connect two ideas by expressing a relationship, such as contrast or addition. So, like we saw, and it's for addition, I want to add a new idea to my sentence. And then for contrast, we had but. So, but shows a contrast between the two ideas that I'm expressing. And then here we have a few transition words already in this text that we see. So we have as well as, we have however, thus, and for instance, right? So then we're going to read this text now to understand how these are being used here. And I am going to want a volunteer to do that for me.
Teacher, you can explain thus again?
Thus,
Yeah,
this one?
yeah, this one.
Right, I'm going to explain a little bit later. We're just going to read now, but I'm going to explain, so don't worry.
Okay.
Janaina, please.
All the text?
Yes.
Okay. Maria loves learning new language as well as traveling to different countries to practice them. She has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. She studies every day at home. Thus, her confidence is gradually improving. For instance, she recently had a successful conversation with a local restaurant owner in Paris.
Yes, very good, very good. Thank you so much.
Can you pronounce the practice? I think I practice.
Here?
Practice. Yeah,
Practice.
practice. Okay.
Yes. Very good, very good. Does anyone else want to read? Yes, Eloisa, please.
Maria loves learning new languages as well as traveling to different countries to practice them. She has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. She studies every day at home, thus, her confidence is gradually improving. For instance, she's recently had a successful conversation with a local restaurant owner in Paris.
Perfect. Very good, girls. Thank you so much. So let's take a look at this little text. I'm gonna read it one more time just so that you guys can really understand the pronunciation and stuff. So Maria loves learning new languages as well as traveling to different countries to practice them. She has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. She studies every day at home, thus, her confidence is gradually improving. For instance, she recently had a successful conversation with the local restaurant owner in Paris. So here we have our context. We have Maria. She loves learning languages, she loves traveling, and all of that stuff. And we have our four transition words here that we just looked at, representing and connecting the ideas in our text, right? So the first one that we have is as well as. So we saw that and expresses audition, we saw that but expresses contrast, and then because and so is kind of a conclusion or a cause and effect relationship there. So, as well as, what do you guys think the relationship being expressed here is? Is it audition? Is it contrast? Is it cause and effect? Do you think that maybe as well as is introducing a new idea or contrasting the idea?
I think it's like addition, like um, como também, sabe?
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yes, Louisa, very good and correct. So this is audition, right? So as well as is being used here just like and. So I could say Maria loves learning new languages and traveling to different countries to practice them. So here we're using as well as the same way that we would use and, but this here sounds a little bit more advanced than just using and. So this I'm teaching you guys this because it's very used for research, for academic papers, for anything that is slightly more advanced than just conversation, right? So, for example, last year I wrote an entire research paper in English and I used a bunch of transition words because they are very used in research to really explain and make it clear for the reader that the relationships that are being expressed, right? So I used however a lot, I used for instance a lot, thus a lot, so this is really for you guys to have an idea of how to create more complex sentences and talk more advanced in English, all right? So Maria loves learning new languages as well as traveling to different countries to practice them. So here we have as well as adding a new idea. We also have the following sentence saying, she has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. As for this one, could anybody tell me the relationship between these two sentences? What do you guys think?
I think this case is contrast because it can be changed for but.
Yes, very good. Once again, very correct. So she has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. So we're seeing some contrast here. So when someone has visited several places in the world, you'd think that they aren't so nervous speaking with the people that they see there, right? But then um, we would expect that she isn't, but she is in fact nervous about speaking with native speakers. And to show that, we can use a contrast transition word to show this contrast between these two ideas. However, is one of them. So she has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. Very good. The following one is she studies every day at home, thus her confidence is gradually improving. Bianca, please.
Teacher, however, can we can use like a recap, like you're saying an idea and you want to recap to it, and we say however or no,
Recap, what do you mean? Recap.
like voltar na ideia inicial.
Right, right. This one is more for contrast because, like we have here, it's two different ideas, and then we're showing this contrast that even though she has visited various places, she still feels nervous. We use it almost the same that we use but. So if you would use but in a sentence, you could use however. Does that make sense?
Yeah, teacher, thanks.
Of course, of course. So here we have she studies every day at home, thus her confidence is gradually improving. So she studies every day at home, her confidence is gradually improving. What do you guys think the relationship would be? Is it audition? Is it contrast? Is it maybe a conclusion or a result? What do you guys think this could be?
I think this can be uh, like an addition because can be changed by up. So,
Right.
I don't know, is this an addition?
Not exactly audition, but it's close to so, like you said. So very good. Thanks, thanks, Elisa, for answering. And if anybody else wants to take a guess, so just like we saw with so kind of adds a conclusion or a result to our sentences, right? And this works very similar. So, like Eloisa said, she studies every day at home, so her confidence is gradually improving. That would be a way to say this sentence. And then with thus, I use it very similarly, and it adds a conclusion or result to my idea. So she studies every day at home. As a result, her confidence is gradually improving. So as a result of her studying, her confidence is gradually improving. That's how I use thus in my sentence, okay? And then, as for the last sentence, we have, for instance, she recently had a successful conversation with the local restaurant owner in Paris. So, this one is very, very simple because it's used in the same way as for example. So, for instance, is the same thing as saying for example, it's just a more advanced way to say that. So, for instance, she recently had a successful conversation with the local restaurant owner in Paris. So, this is exemplifying that her confidence is gradually improving. We say that her confidence is gradually improving, and then we show an example of that. And I use, for instance, to introduce this new idea, right? So, does it make sense to everybody? Yes? Bianca.
Sorry, teacher, I forgot to hand off.
Right. Okay, no problem, no problem. So let's take a look at them in a little bit more detail. So just like I said, as well as adds a new idea to a sentence. So in our case, Maria loves learning new languages as well as traveling to different countries to practice them. We have two similar ideas we're using as well as to connect them and show this audition. So it adds a new idea to a sentence and it's very similar to and. Very, very similar. One thing though is that we have however here, and we have to um, start our sentence with however. So I'm going to say my full sentence, period, ponto final, period. And then I'm going to start my new sentence with however. As for as well as, I cannot start a sentence with as well as. It just comes in the middle of my sentence. So here, Maria loves learning new languages, comma, vírgula, as well as traveling to different countries to practice them. All right. So I'm only going to use as well as in the middle of my sentences. However, is used to contrast ideas and it works very similar to our but. So she has visited several cities in Europe. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. Here, for however, we need to start our sentence with however, just like I explained. So I'm going to say my full sentence. She has visited several cities in Europe. Period. Ponto final. However, and then a comma after, uma vírgula depois. However, she still feels nervous speaking with native speakers. So I'm going to have different structures to use with these transition words. I'm going to have some of them start my sentences, and then I always use a comma after the transition word for these ones, as well as a different one because I'm going to use it in the middle of my sentences. Thus can be used both at the start and in the middle. We're going to see that a little further, I think. So we have thus being used to introduce a result or a conclusion, and it's very similar to so, like Louisa said. So introduce a result or a conclusion. So she studies every day at home, thus her confidence is gradually improving. And for instance, very simple used to exemplify. So I'm going to give an example to support my idea. So it's very similar to, for example. For instance, she recently had a successful conversation with the local restaurant owner in Paris. Now, I divided them by categories, and we're going to see some that express contrast. So just like we saw, however, we have a few more here that can also express contrast between our ideas. So the first one is while and whereas. These are both ones that can be used in the same way, basically. And while is a little bit more common than whereas, but both are used in the same way. So I can say, I'm going to have while either start my sentence or be in the middle of my sentence, but there's always something that comes after it. So my comma will only be at the end of my idea. So while I like coffee, that's a full idea, my sister prefers tea. Right? So I like coffee, my sister prefers tea. So this is different ideas, and I'm showing the contrast between them. So we like different things. I like coffee, but my sister prefers tea. Right? So I'm using while at the start to express this contrast. I could also use while like here in the middle. So it could be I like coffee while my sister prefers tea. Both are correct. Some tourists appreciate the locals' kindness, whereas others complain about the dirty streets. So some tourists appreciate the locals' kindness, whereas others complain about the dirty streets. So here I am contrasting the idea that some tourists appreciate kindness, and then the others, on the other hand, talk about something negative. So ones are on the positive side, the others are on the negative side. And I'm using whereas to contrast these two ideas, right? So I could also use while here. I could start my sentence with whereas, for example. Whereas some tourists appreciate the locals' kindness, others complain about the dirty streets. So these two are not going to be like however. While, comma, I like, that's not right. I'm going to use them with my sentence, right? So while I like coffee, full idea, then I have my next idea, okay? And then I have although and though. These are some of the ones that you guys are very confused with because we have thought, we have though, we have tough. But these ones, look at the spelling. We have THOUGH. We don't have a T here for it to be thought, okay? So, okay, a little bit further. So, although, and though. So they are both kind of the same thing. They're really used in the same way. So just like while and whereas, I'm going to have my full sentence and then my next sentence, it's going to be all together. So although he likes going out with his friends, full idea, he has preferred to stay home lately. So I'm showing this contrast between the fact that he likes going out, but then nowadays he likes to stay at home. So it's a contrast between these ideas again. Although he likes going out with his friends, he has preferred to stay home lately. And then that could also be in the middle. He likes going out with his friends, although he has preferred to stay home lately. And the punctuation is very important. I'm going to have a comma here, okay? So always when I end my idea, I'm going to have a comma to separate them, okay? Yes, Elise.
What do you mean lately?
Lately,
Yeah.
ultimamente. He has preferred to stay home
Um,
ultimamente.
Thank you.
Of course, no problem. I had to wake up early today, though I usually sleep in. So I had to wake up early today, though I usually sleep in. So this is showing another contrast here that I usually sleep in, I usually sleep until later, but today I had to wake up early. So the same way that I can use but for a sentence is the same way that I can use while, whereas, although, or though. This one could also be used with although. These two are used in the same way, just like I said. And I could also say, though I had to wake up early today, I usually sleep in, right? Now I'm going to have despite and in spite of. In spite of. These ones are used a little bit differently because I can only use despite or in spite of with a noun after, com substantivo, like the difficulties, the traffic, the house, the laptop, or a verb in gerund, a verb in ing. So despite arriving late, despite waking up early. So my verb has to be in gerund after with ing at the end. So she succeeded despite the difficulties. So she succeeded despite the difficulties. So this one, another contrast. She had difficulties, but she succeeded. So she succeeded despite the difficulties. This one is similar to our apesar de em português. Então ela se deu bem, ela teve sucesso apesar das dificuldades, right? So she succeeded despite the difficulties. Or in spite of the traffic, we arrived on time. In spite of the traffic, we arrived on time. So even though there was traffic, we arrived on time. Right? So then, despite and in spite of, almost the same thing used in the same way. Does this all make sense to everybody? I know this can be a little bit difficult to grasp, but anybody have any questions? No? All right. Yes. Joy. Did someone have their hand open to ask a question?
Sorry, my mic was closed.
No problem.
When we use despite and in spite of, when we know how to use it.
You mean the difference or just in general?
Yes.
The
Yes.
difference between them.
Yes.
Right. No difference. We can use them in the same way. Despite is a
Ah.
little bit more common than in spite of. So you'll see despite more often, but in spite of is also correct. They can both be used in the same way.
Okay, thanks.
Of course, no problem. Now we're going to see some that are more about addition or cause and effect. So the first half here, in addition, additionally, moreover, and furthermore, are used. For addition, the three last ones are for cause and effect or a conclusion or a result. So we have in addition and additionally. These are again used in the same way, these two. So I can say, in addition to being a musician, he also likes to paint. I'm always going to say, in addition to something. So in addition to something, to always comes after. So in addition to being a musician, he also likes to paint. In addition to being a musician, he also likes to paint. So here again, I have my comma here. always going to have a comma there so that it is grammatically correct. So in addition to being a musician, he also likes to paint. I'm adding this new idea that he likes to paint to my previous idea that he is a musician. The hotel offers free breakfast. Additionally, guests can use the spa for free. So the hotel offers free breakfast. Additionally, adding a new idea to my sentence, guests can use the spa for free. So again, adding my ideas together, right? So very similar to and, just like I would say, the hotel offers free breakfast and guests can use the spa for free. The same way, just leveling up and making this more advanced. Moreover and furthermore are both used in the same way as well, just like additionally. So I'm going to, just like I said with however, I'm going to have my first sentence and then I'm going to start my next sentence with furthermore or with moreover. Okay, so let me just grab a sip of water. So the evidence is strong. Furthermore, it's supported by multiple studies. So the evidence is strong. Furthermore, it's supported by multiple studies. So I'm adding a new idea to my sentence. I'm saying that the evidence is very strong. And then I'm also saying that it's supported by multiple studies. So this one is addition. It's adding a new idea to my sentence. I can also say that she is talented and hardworking. Moreover, she is kind to everyone. She is talented and hardworking. Moreover, she is kind to everyone. So I'm also adding a new idea to my previous sentence that she's talented and hardworking and she is kind to everyone. So furthermore, moreover, also addition. Now, therefore, as a result, and hence are used to introduce a conclusion or introduced for this cause and effect relationship. So just like we use so, just like we use thus that we saw before, we can use therefore, we can use as a result, and we can use hence. So let's see a few examples. He didn't show up, so he didn't go to the place, he didn't show up, therefore the meeting was canceled. So he didn't show up, therefore the meeting was canceled. So because he didn't show up, then the meeting was canceled. So this is showing the conclusion of the fact that he didn't show up. So he didn't show up, they had to do something, the conclusion was that the meeting was canceled. And then I'm going to also start my following sentence with therefore. So he didn't show up, full sentence, start my next one with therefore, and always going to have a comma after uma vírgula. She lied to her friend, therefore, when she found out, they had a huge fight. So she lied to her friend, therefore, when she found out, they had a huge fight. So this one is more of a cause and effect relationship. So because she lied to her friend, then the effect or the conclusion was that